Boom! And we're back. Next, we have our first panel of the day. To introduce our guest and moderate this one is the founder and lead economist at Economics Design, a research-focused consultancy for digital ecosystems. In the academic world, she contributes to research work in various fields like math and economics, while having practitioner exposure with startups and global businesses. Please welcome Lisa J.Y. Tan to BlockDown. Lisa, the panel is all yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the panelists that's here today. Today, we're going to talk about Web3 and the infrastructure to build Web3 and how are we building that infrastructure. So today, we have with us four very, very esteemed people. We have Matthew, the co-founder of AlphaZero. We have Henry, the co-founder and CEO of Streamer. We have Bette, the co-founder of Acala, Karura, and Lamina. And we have Charlie, the co-founder of PokerBase. So feel free to start introducing yourself, and let's start with Matthew.
Hi, thanks, Lisa. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with everybody here today. So my name is Matt, and I am the president of the AlphaZero Foundation. We are a Swiss-based foundation that is essentially building out some of the new and the latest infrastructure for the distributed ledger space. So in 2019, the team managed to go ahead and obtain a peer-reviewed research paper that was done at a conference hosted by the ACM for a consensus protocol. This was, pretty much at the time the most innovative and theoretically optimal. But as we all understand, you have to take what is theoretical and put it into practice. So we've been sitting in stealth mode for about 3 years now, and just sort of peeking our heads above water. So instead of running silent and running deep, we have to at some point surface. And we've been focused primarily on building out a framework using the Substrate technology stack. And from there, we have also done a bunch of stuff on multi-party computation, threshold signatures, and have quite a few innovative solutions whenever it comes to the entire space.
Fantastic. So that's a very important infrastructure that we'll talk about a bit later. But before that, let's move on.
Breaking up at the crucial moment there.
Oh, yeah.
Lisa, we lost you for a while.
Am I back?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So, yes, thank you, Matthew, for explaining what Alpha is doing so far. And we're going to talk about that later. But right now, can we have Henry to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Henry. I'm heading the Streamer project as a co-founder of that. I have a technical background, so I'm quite involved in the day-to-day of the project and architecting it and pushing it forward. I'm a Finnish guy that's living in Zug in Switzerland. This is our office here. And I've been in crypto since 2016 when we started planning the project, and we did an ICO in 2017 and have since been developing the project. And Streamer is a decentralized protocol for real-time data, and I'll be happy to chat more about that during this panel, obviously. So that's me.
Awesome. And now we have Bette, which is the co-founder of Acala, Karura, and Lamina. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me here, Lisa, and nice to meet everybody. I am actually calling in from Auckland, New Zealand. It's 10 p.m. Here. I'm sure everyone is all over the place. And so we are actually building in the Polkadot space, which is the Internet of blockchain protocol, or AKA the TCP IP for blockchain. And then for Acala, we are the DeFi hub on Polkadot that providing the decentralized finance infrastructure for, I guess, the new economy or the new open finance future that's about to come. And of course, the Polkadot ecosystem, I'm sure we'll have opportunity to discuss. And with the substrate new blockchain framework, it actually creates a new beast or a new category of how we can innovate. And taking Acala as an example, we are both a suite of DeFi products as well as a platform that you can build on top of. So we are a collection of a stablecoin, a lending platform, and a decentralized exchange as product suites. And then on top of that, we have EVM and other smart contract platform that folks can actually compose with all the money Legos that we built, as well as the cross-chain liquidity like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and any other assets that we can bring into the system to actually build more, I guess, scalable solutions for the end user. So this is the new beast. You are both platform as well as a product suites. And then we've been building since the end of 2019. And very luckily through that last year, we've built out a 200,000 plus community across the world. And at the same time, we are production ready. Everybody is anticipating the upcoming Kusama mainnet, which is a precursor of the Polkadot mainnet. And we are ready to, as one of the parachains, ready to launch. And yeah, so super excited. I guess this is like a new era that are about to begin, I guess, the future of a multi-chain future, I guess. So very happy to be here and meet everyone and discuss further. Thanks.
Super. We're all building the different infrastructure to the whole DeFi piece or the whole Web3 piece. And lastly, we have Charlie, who is the co-founder of Polkabase. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you very much for the host. Yeah, I think what Betty just said about Polkadot, I resonated a lot in the last 3 years. Being one of the ambassadors in China, co-founder of Polkabase, being one of the main interpreter and translator for Gavin during most of the Polkadot China events. Yeah, the last 3 years has been quite a nice journey for Web3 ecosystem development, right? And while my main role as Polkabase community is, building the bridge between a lot of the European and actually Western and Web3 type of technical project into the China ecosystem. While our main role is to do the developer engagement, right? And we are a very good partner with Rust community and the CSDN and most of the technical university in China. While my other role is mainly focused on the early stage investment in a lot of the technical projects. So our fund called Carbon Blue Ventures, partner with Fudan University, with most of the and all the other FMBA and also engineering universities in China. We work with a lot of infrastructure layer projects, also with fintech projects. And this year we start to partner with the crypto finance conference and trying to build the bridge between a lot of the Western fintech solution, DeFi solution companies between the Chinese ones. I think this year, as what Betty just said, we are very anticipating about the upcoming parachain slot. Has been a lot of story, a lot of events talking about this in the last 2 years. Finally, it's about time. My other role is being very hands-on, helping, advising a lot of DeFi solution projects in different ecosystem. Polkadot is the main one, what I focus. And I think in this year, I'm also very interested about all the DeFi plus NFT solutions. And another ecosystem I'm very kind of getting more and more engaged is Tezos, and especially in their clean NFT solution. And it's very interesting for us to look into the new NFT innovation this year. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about the projects that you're doing. This session, we're going to focus a little bit more about Web3. So Web3 is the denominator of all the things that you're building, be it substrate, be it peer-to-peer decentralization, data, infrastructure, use cases. It's all building on top of this new thing called Web3 that we are working very hard on. We're building the infrastructure to what Web3 is. And we're really laying the foundation so we can start building these amazing technology and amazing things that can be built on top of that. So to get everyone started, what is Web3 to you, and how is it different from the existing Web2 that we have today?
So I'll go ahead and start. So I mean, obviously this is definitely, like, as you asked in the question, it's unique to everybody. So I think that whenever you think about this, it is highly dependent on whether or not you're an end user, you're interacting with the website, or you are building out the infrastructure, just like everybody here on this panel. So, as an end user, whenever you're interacting, whenever you're going to your web browser, whether it's Brave or one of these new ones that might have some hooks into IPFS and some of these unstoppable domain solutions, the idea is that for the most part, your interaction is going to change, right? You as a user, your data becomes more centric to you and under your control. That's probably a big component to all of this. And then on the back end, whenever it comes to the infrastructure, we're moving more into this notion of decentralization. So whether or not it's the file storage that's going to be distributed in a way using things like erasure codes. This is a basic technology that's been around since the 70s as far as the mathematical machinery is concerned. This is used in RAID 0, RAID 0+1. It's used for CD-ROMs. It's how we communicated with the Voyager program back in the late 70s. So, all this stuff can be used as a means to provide a better distributed system and more robustness and resiliency. So you have file storage that can be separated out. You have protocols for communication, whether or not this is going to be a move towards mesh networks, different distributed systems and classical Byzantine agreement protocols. Sort of the infrastructure is also moving towards this open and dynamic membership model for Byzantine agreement. So this is, whenever we look at these underlying distributed ledgers and consensus protocols, this is, what's happening at that level. So in a way, a lot of it is just highly dependent on your, where you're coming in at. And there's all sorts of things from the end user's perspective too, whether it's going to be, better interaction with the machine learning side of things, or whether or not it's going to be, more tailored and custom to your experience. And I think that's where we're looking at as far as the direction of Web3 is concerned.
Any of you?
Yeah, definitely along the same lines. I mean, for me, Web3 is definitely about the sort of decentralized web that democratizes the power in the internet and unlocks a class of new use cases that have previously been unfeasible. I mean, today most applications are running on the big 5 cloud data centers, but this will change as these classic platforms are replaced by decentralized backends like smart contracts or IPFS or Streamer for real-time data transport, and new kinds of applications become available. Like you can have decentralized social media apps with huge message volume and rewarding content authors. You can have like more secure IAMs. You can have public infrastructure, IoT kind of setups where data is flowing in this open and permissionless network. You can have data crowdsourcing and data monetization kind of activities, which sort of fall into the space that we're looking at. In general, like giving boost to data economies and sort of self-sovereign ownership of both data and value. And of course, in Web3, value transactions will be sort of trivial if they're powered by cryptocurrency and self-sovereign control over one's digital assets. So I think that is the paradigm shift that inspires me the most.
Yeah, I'll probably just add to what Matt and Henry, just articulated. It's pretty cool stuff that what they said. So, I mean, for me, it's like probably 2 things. One is like, for the first time, we actually own stuff. I think many people didn't realize previously we didn't actually own anything. The money in the bank, it's actually IOU, like the bank actually owns the money. And then any of the, paper certificate or whatever certificate that you have, or even property, we don't actually own it. We actually trust a third party, and they're pretty much just IOU. So with Bitcoin to start with, and then follow on with all the other technology evolved out of it, for the first time, we actually own value. I mean, for many of us, like I live in New Zealand, the banking system here, in comparison to elsewhere, is almost like perfect, right? So I don't feel like most people here doesn't feel the pain. I think for folks who are similar in the situation, you almost feel like you own the money in the bank because you can actually almost like access it whenever you want, apart from weekends. And then you know the bank doesn't run. You know, the monetary policies are relatively stable, governments are trustworthy, so you don't feel anything. But I've been in and I've grown up in certain parts of the world that are completely like that. And then the bank can shut down, and they could just recall the legal tender and then say this bill is no longer valid. And suddenly you realize you don't actually own anything. And also the second thing I realized is the monetary policy is owned by somebody else when it's not crypto. So for crypto, especially like Bitcoin, I'm specifically referring to, is while you own the Bitcoin that you actually hold a private key to, but nobody actually owns the monetary policy. That's very important because almost any other economy in the world, somebody actually owns it, or some group of people in control actually owns it. And that's what gives the beauty and whatever we have today, created by Bitcoin. And once people realize that this is possible, I think that's where all of the people here in this room is start to create technology and applications that are making not just one application. I think Bitcoin is a little bit like email, right? So email, you send messages to each other, but Bitcoin is more like you're sending value and owning the value to each other. So there's one application, but all of us here are building applications so that we can change other fabrics of the society and the world that we live in. So based on that, then the second thing that probably inspired me would be with all the Web 2 technology, it does create a huge asymmetry of resources, wealth. I think Henry actually touched on that, is centralization. I think Matt also touched on that, centralization of resources, like all the big companies today, they probably hold on to 99.99% of the wealth in the world, and how much tax they're paying, and how much employees they're hiring, and how much of the profit they made out of the data or everything else they collect freely from all the users. Like if you're using a free product, you are the product, right? So then, but they're not sharing all of that. However, in the blockchain world, the Web3 technology, for example, in Acala, one way we're measuring the success is one day, as a founding team, we leave the network alone, and then the network still survives. They still self-govern. It's still economically solvent. This is how we measure our success. How are we able to do it? Is because through the blockchain network and also the token economics, we are able to make every user, every contributor, every participant a co-owner and stakeholder of the network. Because it's never been before. If I walk into a bank, I open a bank account and borrow a loan from a bank, it will never allow me to be a shareholder of the bank, and I can never vote to fire the CEO if he's done something wrong. But this is happening right now on the blockchain space, and this is what we are building, right? I think this is going to shift not just the financial side, but also how we collaborate as a society, fostering more truth, less trust way. That's what Dr. Gavin will always say. Web3 ethos is more truth, less trust, and that's where we're heading, I guess. So that's me.
Yeah, just to try to follow up with what Matthew, Henry, and Betty just said, I think they touched upon very good points and covered about what I have to say, actually. And just to add up a bit on my personal feeling about Web3, in the last I would say last 10 years, we have been, the technology society has been changing so much, right? We see the hype curve on the AI, on the IoT, and now on the, and also on the decentralized web. And now we're talking about Web3, interoperable networks, and scalable blockchain solutions, right? I think one thing, on a non-technical side of how I look at Web3 in the future is a human-centric and responsible technology, right? So everybody's talking about the relationship with each other, the programmable society, right? So the trust can be built on top of the, the decentralized blockchain solutions, right? I think that we're still missing some kind of interesting elements, and I see a lot of interesting projects that we are investing, that are building in terms of identity management, in terms of on-chain data scaling, in terms of privacy protection, in terms of IoT data, on-chain, and all the other things. And also, we see all kinds of use cases in the decentralized finance world, in the gaming, decentralized gaming, and also the non-fungible token, all that, right? Basically is to try to build a new layer infrastructure that can incentivize the people actually provide value, right? So that actually there is a new, how to say, social order or economic order, right? It's kind of against, I wouldn't say against, kind of the new way, kind of is different compared to the existing Web 2.0 platform, right? What Bette and Henry just mentioned, a lot of our users' data getting monetized with no kind of rewards back, right? In the existing platforms, I think it's not really that sustainable in the long run. So a lot of big companies actually realizing that they're kind of revolutionizing themselves, right? And also we see a lot of blockchain startups. Carbon Blue Ventures has been investing and incubating a lot, is doing this kind of bottom-up new solution, right? To really innovating that. I think one part really still, I'm very looking forward to on the community and ecosystem side, since I'm building a lot of technical community, is to engage the user and we align with the interests. So I think in the Web3 fields, a lot of the real users actually now have the ownership, become part of the shareholder into some very fast growing projects, right? In the internet or Web 2.0 world, it's normally very difficult. A lot of users are not necessarily the shareholder or the owner, co-owner of the project, right? Now with all the tokenized platform and the infrastructure, most of the real users actually become part of the owner of the project, right? I feel that's very interesting, and also the real meaningful way to engage the community in the long run, for the sustainable way, right? So I think that's very important in terms of for people to build a new project, to do the token design, right? To engage with the real user, become a real token holder and investor, not just the people who wants to make some speculation and pursue for the investment return, right? I think that's very important for the future of Web3, for the long term.
Absolutely. Fantastic explanations by all of you. So if I could summarize, we asked about what's Web3 and how is it different. And Web3 is really about ownership of things, ownership of data, ownership of money, ownership of the things that's being built, democratization of power and wealth, and also building solutions with a human-centric approach. Web 2 was fantastic. Web 2 was a great experiment. It was built for everyone to use. And now we're moving forward and continuously improve and innovate to move to Web 3. So in that topic, in your field of domain knowledge, what would you say is the most important thing in the Web 3 infrastructure?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about ownership, then it has to be, public-private key cryptography and being able to prove ownership of assets using that. I mean, that's just going to be your foundational layer for anything as far as ownership is concerned. Whenever it comes to data-centric policies and being able to showcase that you have more privacy-focused features, it also comes down to cryptography as well, multi-party computation techniques, for instance. And then, a lot of this is just foundational layers of basically puzzle pieces that you're looking at, putting together, and in order to build out whatever application that you're interested in doing, whether or not this is going to be a streaming service like what Henry is working on, and whether or not it's going to be these types of DeFi protocols with Acala or so on and so forth. At the end of the day, if you really look at the foundational layer, the building blocks comes from the mathematical framework and technology.
I fully agree with that. Couldn't agree more. I mean, why would we rely on trust if we can have math, right? That has always made a huge deal of sense to me. And okay, if we can get things like ownership of assets, ownership of data, I think that's going well. We're in a good spot, and the things that are missing is basically scalability and usability. And if we can nail those things, then I think Web 3.0 can actually like make a breakthrough, where currently it's like very constrained and people are not familiar with this concept of taking responsibility about their keys. And that's the place where I see that there's still a challenge remaining, and it's a pretty fundamental one, actually, because people are not used to this at all. They trust that banks and other entities will keep their assets safe, but now you're responsible, and that's really scary for most people. Us who are sort of early adopters or technically savvy or whatever, we don't find that to be a problem. We rather prefer this way because we feel that we have that true ownership, but still it's pretty far maybe from the guy on the street. And I'm sort of, even though this is not the area where we are working as a project, I see that as one of the key components that still need to be somehow solved for Web 3.0 to become like a mainstream success. But I think we're getting there, though.
Sorry, Betty, I just challenge Henry with something. So that's because you spoke like a true technologist, and I love it. And that's how Web3 is so beautiful, because a lot of things can be engineered into the system, especially when we talk about token economics. Token is really the incentive to affect people's behaviors and these different kind of things. But the difference between engineering and economics is that engineering can build the most beautiful, perfectly engineered system design, but you always have the human factor that you can't model in. And that's where a lot of application becomes, they goes away, because you have so beautiful math. And I love math. I'm an economist. I think math is just an art on its own. But a lot of people don't understand that. And a lot of people can tap into the beauty that math provides. And I think human behaviors are so hard to model. So you can have the best cryptography in the world, but without the human understanding, because we also talked about human-centric approach and bottom-up approach. We're missing that piece, don't you think?
Yes, exactly. Like, I think math and engineering is required to build these new things, but it's a requirement, but not quite sufficient, I think, to make it a success. Other things are needed as well. But it's a good place to start, though. Without the math and without the cryptography and without the engineering and the sort of taking responsibility of your own assets, we would never get there.
And also the other thing to consider is that these are all, whenever you talk about the human aspect, this is all an experiment. We don't know how this is going to play out. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to just test it in the real world. And what that means is we can try to create incentives, whether or not, you coming from it as an economist, understand this type of economic game theory, but you're going to drive human action by incentivizing people. And ownership of a protocol, ownership of a network definitely helps to align the interests of making sure that things are going to be safe and secure. So there's a lot that can be said from a very high level, from a philosophical point of view, that there is going to be this ability of maintaining safety and security, but combining that with that human element. And at the end of the day, as I say, we're just testing this out, and we don't know where it's going to go. But I think we all have a good feeling and intuition as to the direction that we're taking this. And I'm looking forward to everything.
Betty, do you want to share a bit more on the application level of how important, or what's the important thing in Web3 infrastructure?
That was a very lively discussion there. I think certainly like blockchain is not trying to replace human. I think maybe AI will. Maybe those two combined together is going to be very evil. But before we get there, though, the human aspect is actually quite important, because a lot of major events that happen in crypto is because of that. For example, we always say code is law. However, who makes the law? Can the law be amended? Even for constitutions, you have amendments to constitutions, and like the stuff that we have today, like on Ethereum and Bitcoin, we have very loose community driven approach. There's still not code on how to govern all of this, how does actually happen, how the discussion happen, how the consensus will make on changing the code, right? I think on chain we have a way by cryptography how the consensus is made. Everything is like trustless. However, when it comes to how we can evolve, right? Because when you say a network will never evolve and then one chain fits all and then forever, that is just not realistic, right? I think as human species, we are deemed to evolve and change, and there are many different versions of us, very different varieties. So it's going to be very many different requirements and compromises what we need to make, and you're not going to always be satisfied. So the governance piece is actually one thing that's like hugely missing. But of course, protocols like Polkadot, of course, I speak from where I am building right now, is addressing this issue. And for example, because in terms of voting and the social science, it's not quite, we don't have the science. We have a lot of science. It's still not perfect. But for example, the voting system in the States, I might piss some people off, it kind of just like, because of that, there's a study, it's a converging on two-party, right? And then once you go into the two-party system, you can never go back. But I make a comparison in New Zealand, right? For New Zealand, a few years ago, it was similar systems, but then we changed it to multi-party, slightly better. So approach, but it's still not as advanced as something like maybe like single transferable vote. And then you also are able to put a weight on your vote, depends on certain things, so that you can vote with expertise and things like that. And this is exactly what Polkadot is experimenting on chain. So what I'm talking here is like nothing hypothetical, not on PowerPoint. This is like today is operating since last May on Polkadot. There are a bunch of councillors being elected by all the token holders, and then there are referendums being passed almost every week to govern things. For example, should we denominate the token, or should we change certain parameters of the network, so that we don't need to go into, I guess, a war between certain interest parties, for example, miners and the users, and then you go into a situation of you have to fork, right? And then you split. And then you split not only community, but also resources, which is not good for anyone. So what we're talking about here is like the governance is also becomes a code. Then you kind of start evolving from there. Of course, it's still not perfect, but as best as experiment. So I'll just like comment on that. But of course, on the scalability side, I think there's also a lot being done. So protocols like Polkadot, there's also Cosmos and many others are working on this layer. I think if you use an analogy, I think Bitcoin is a bit like calculator, that you can do specific things, but quite hard to program. And Ethereum is a bit like mainframe, right? The whole world trying to use one computer, but it's pretty cool. Whereas now we get into a stage of, should we have an internet, right? So what happened after mainframe? It's like servers, internet, and then we get to Web 2, right? So I think we're about at that time where you can view Polkadot as a trust or ledger or consensus as service, right? I think that's what Polkadot is already delivering. I don't know if anyone using those terms, but for application builders like us, we are using Polkadot as trust as a service, or ledger or consensus as service. So we don't need to take care of the proof of stake or how much of the market cap is, so that how secure is my network. It also takes care of communication for cross-chain. And then for application builders like us, we just focus on our specialized area. So I would say in terms of infrastructure, Polkadot is taking that as their mission. And then for us, then everybody is specializing. I think the future is specialization, because that's going to bring excellence and be able to solve domain-specific problem really well. So for example, for us, Acala, we say we're DeFi infrastructure for reasons, right? Not just claiming, as a label. For example, on Acala, because we're able to customize, so you can bring your own gas fee, or gas token. So we work with, say, like Ampleforce. They're going to open a branch on Polkadot through Acala. So they're dropping their ERC20s on Acala's EVM. Their users can pay ample as gas fees, right? Or if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, you can bring your Bitcoin to Acala through the RAN protocol gateway, or through Polka BTC, however way you want to bring Bitcoin to us, and you can pay BTC as gas fee if you want to, if you don't want to hold anything else, right? So this is something that we are focusing on, is how to specialize and solving some of those so-called UX problems, right? So a lot of the UX problems, not just about the designers, but actually about the stuff behind the scene. The second thing is liquidity. So at the moment, is a lot of liquidity are very fragmented, right? So what we are doing is connecting all the dots. So for example, there are multiple Bitcoin bridges and Ethereum bridges, and also other bridges to major chains that are building in the Polkadot ecosystem. So you will see, liquidity converging into places. And also a specific example is we are building with Compound. So we're building a start port where we can link up to Compound's money market services. And then so that, the DOT tokens and also various different assets from multiple different chains can go up to the money market. So it's like a multi-chain money market. And then the assets can come down to various different chains to serve different purposes or use it for different things. So I think that's very technical description of what we're doing. But I think for the end user, right, like my mom and dad, they will be able to, for example, use this on their phone maybe, or on their computer, a savings account, a dollar denominated, earning 5% versus for the bank advertising for 0.5%, interest rate on their mobile phone. And how that's possible, they wouldn't know. But behind the scene, it could be 5 different blockchain networks, including a privacy network, including a DeFi network, including some of the infrastructure, the storage and things like that, all combined together, serving the needs of the end user. I think that's where we are heading. Of course, all of us here in the room is actually building the pipes and the roads, behind the scene. But yeah, that's where we're heading, though.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're actually running out of time. So to summarize, and this time I'll start with Charlie. To summarize, if you can give a maximum of 3 words, how any individual can come in to get involved with Web3 or participate in Web3 somehow, what would you tell someone in 3 words or 1 line?
Okay, that's a pretty challenging one to start with. 3 words. Empowering technology with trust. That's 1-liner. Maybe I will try with 3 words. First one is always thinking about aligning interest with incentive on the new technology. Transparency, and then decentralization.
Amazing.
That's the 3 words I'll think about. Yeah.
That's great. And Betty, do you want to give 3 words of how someone can get involved with Web3?
That's tough. So if you're a developer, we're running a Substrate Runtime Academy. So please join, learn, and code. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we definitely need more developers. And Henry, what about you?
I tried to compress my thoughts into 3 words. I guess it's a hard task, but making a reference to the Matrix movie, take the red pill, right? It's as a symbol of learning something new, jumping into a new world from an old world, with what Matt said before, that there's this experimental nature and uncertain end of the crypto and the Web 3.0. And that's very common to everything that's like revolution instead of evolution. We don't know what the end result will be. So take the red pill and jump in.
Fantastic. I believe we have all taken the red pill over here.
Yes.
And what about you, Matt?
Yeah, so I'm going to preface it and say I don't think it matters who or what you are in, whenever it comes to this space. And at the end of the day, join our community. We're really just trying to bring everybody together, whether or not you're coming in from a technologist perspective, whether or not you're just interested in the technology, we're focusing on, education, philosophy, economy, art, all these things that can make a much more inclusive world with everybody involved so that we can build something wonderful together.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We're really working together to build Web3 and empowering people, trying to decentralize ownership and trying to build a new system that benefits everyone equally and not just rewarding the top 0.001%. So we're really building a better future for tomorrow. So thank you very much for you guys, Matt, Henry, Betty, and Charlie. If any of you are interested, feel free to reach out to them. They're very friendly, they don't bite, really nice people. So just reach out to them, they'll be replying. So thank you guys for your time.
Thanks, Lisa.